All right, hello everyone. Here we are back for another pro guide here. And I want to go over a couple things here real quick because there's recently been some changes to the Golf Clash Notebook app. You will now see every sand wedge being far more accurate. Same with the rough irons. You're going to find these values to be much more true. You'll want to still pay attention to the elevations because the only way you're going to go wrong with the new values is if you're just having trouble figuring out that something's uphill or downhill. I'm going to try, to point you in the right direction. Of course, I won't be in the sand or anything probably for the most part today, but I'm going to try just pointing you in the right direction and just saying, oh, this is what to look for elevation. If you do need more help judging elevation, make sure you check out the help. You'll see there's some very good tips right in here. Also, secondary wind effect is still going to come in play. However, with the new ring values that you're going to see reported, they're going to be much more precise. You'll also see a new power slider. So as I input a wind, you'll see that the values have a 0 to 100% scale. 0% is going to emulate what you see at min here. 100% is going to be what's at max. So that's why you see all the numbers staying within those parameters. So what you're going to be doing is using this percentage slider, and you're going to estimate the closest percent in that range. So if it appears to be, a 20%, like up towards the bottom of the min, like right in here, then you'll play it down here at the bottom. If it appears to be up here, well, then you'll slide it up here. So you'll always analyze this range and use that value. Similarly, on top of that, you're going to see this new wind directional input. You'll see when you use this, it's going to give you much more precise values. So, however, the biggest thing to keep in mind is you're still going to need to use this power slider in order to use this tool effectively and get the right ring values. So I'm going to go over a bunch of shot scenarios, and we're going to actually talk about that as to how to calculate with the power slider. So do pay attention to these videos, and they will help guide you along the way. So here you can see we're going to go, let's just stay with this. It's a pretty standard bag for me. Let's see, make sure everything kind of matches up here. I see backbone here. Looks like this only has a backbone 1. I don't know why. So backbone 8, I'm going to have to go update that real quick. It's probably because I got real lazy and just didn't want to bother putting in all this input. Wherever you leave your club, that's the way that it's going to auto load. So I like to keep it on the top and then just check mark the bottom. So we're going to go there. And aside from that, everything else is going to flow as normal. We'll just keep everything else as is. So there you have it. And let's go ahead, jump into this round here and start going over some shots. And as I mentioned, every step of the way, I'm going to let you know what I'm doing with the power slider and why I'm doing it. The most important concept that you're going to need to learn is it's not about where your target that you want to land sets up. It's actually the opposite. It's where you're moving the target to that you need to use the distance slider. There's no exception to that rule. You always need to do this. So wherever I'm pulling the target to, if I'm going to use this as my power slider, so this is, let's just call this and say it's 95% shot where I'm pulled to right now. However, I'm going to be adjusting rings, and I'm going to try to just lay it up into this fairway, and I'm going to be pulling back 3 rings, for instance, in this direction. And how I know it's probably about 3 rings, as you'll see, there it is. 3.3 is the max number it's giving me. Keep it in mind that I'm going to be pulling back to about, say, 80% club, and that's where you're going to see that come into play. So you'll see that as you pull back from max club, you're going to need to consider that into your slider. So if I started the slider up here and I pulled it 3 rings to down here, I need to make sure that I'm using this 83% ring number. This is the only number that matters. The first number doesn't. It never will. So that's the most important concept that you're going to need to understand about using the power slider. Where you started never matters. It's where you adjust to. That's the power slider value that you use each and every time. So what you'll see that I'll do is I'll just try to basically visualize where I'm going to pull my rings to, and just basically say, oh, well, it looks like I'm probably pulling back, 10%, or I'm pulling back 20%. It could be 40%. It's really based on how many rings you're going to need to go and how much span that club has. So I did hit it very close here to wedge range, and it looks like I'm able to get it. Now, one of the things that you'll want to do here is you will see that this hole is uphill. How do I know that? The pin's gone. You can see that the next fairway is gone. It goes up a hill. When you go to the Take Shot View button, you can see that very, very easily. Now here you'll see that it becomes almost a full tailwind. So we're going to need to set up here. However, we're going to be pulling back again. So I can't use the min number or the max number. I need to use a little bit more towards mid club. And you can also see that I'm going to need to set up very aggressively to the edge. So here you're going to see 3.3-ish rings, somewhere in that vicinity. And as I mentioned, I'm going to have to pull back. And there you're actually seeing it land even shorter. And part of the reason is because it's so uphill. It's always going to land about a ring short when that happens. So you got to be very careful. You're probably going to want to bring Hornet if you had to do what I just did, which is Thorn 4? It doesn't have the top spin. You really needed 2 top spin there. Okay, so if you get down to the wedge, you'll find that the long iron, if you keep it to the long iron, you'll be able to use no spin. However, the short iron is going to need 2.5 top spin. So without that 2.5 top spin, that's why you're seeing it come up short. I kind of knew that was going to happen, but you also saw that my ball landed short on the fairway. That's because I'm moving down to a lower target and hitting up to a higher elevation. Anytime that happens, the ball naturally lands short. There's nothing you can do about it. So what you need to do is you actually need to undercorrect intentionally in situations like that. However, you'll see that this shot's going to be relatively straightforward, easy anyway. So it's really not going to, affect anything other than I just am not going to make it. But do be keeping in mind that you should probably bring your Hornet here, have a little bit more top spin. 2 to 2.5 bars is going to be ideal for that pitch. And ideally, same thing's going to apply. You hit to a higher target. The ball is going to, when you hit to that higher target and pull down to lower, it's going to short hit. Okay, so it landed at least a ring short. So you'll want to almost pull 1 less ring kind of intentionally. So you'll have to figure that out in situations where you're pulling to lower and higher ground. A lot of times you'll see that it's very level. However, this was not one of those. This is actually a drastic, you can see the pin disappears. So anytime the pin disappears, we're talking about a substantial elevation change. So I used minus 10%, which is actually, in the grand scheme of things with the new wind model, you'll find that 20 is going to be probably the absolute most you'll ever need. So I used half of that, which is also substantial. You're going to see most of this guide, with the exception of very few holes, I'm just going to be using 0 or 5%, and that's it. So, good luck there. Hopefully that makes things a little bit more clear for you. Good luck with that hole, and I'll catch you guys for 2 momentarily.